If you had told me a few years ago that my biggest breakthrough in my business and my life would come from surrender, I probably would have smiled to you and then just ignore it. Because surrender sounds nice and sounds spiritual, it sounds peaceful, and it also sounds like losing. And I don't know about you, but I never liked losing. And for most of my life, surrender feels like weakness, like giving up, like not trying hard enough. And if you're a builder, if you're an entrepreneur, if you have a business, you have responsibility. You need to help people, you need to hold space for people, and you don't exactly wake up thinking like today's a good day to give up control. But here's what I've learned. The hardest seasons of my life weren't caused by failure. They were caused by gripping too tightly. So I used to think surrender meant stopping. But what I learn now is that surrender actually means you are releasing what was never yours to control in the first place. And for me, that lesson didn't come gently at all. It comes with so much pressure and tough times and all of that, through confusions, through moments where I generally don't know what to do next anymore. And if you're someone who runs coaching business, healing wellness businesses, or entrepreneurship in general, you probably understand this tension. Like, you're responsible for people that trust you and that you have this responsibility to care for them. And somewhere in that mix, you start believing that probably everything depends on you. Your income, your clients, your reputations, your impact. And it all starts feeling like it's resting on your shoulders. And at first, that might feel empowering, like I can make this happen, until you realize that you're exhausted. You're checking your revenue, you're checking your messages, you're overthinking every single post and replaying conversations in your head. I've been there. I've refreshed my checking accounts like it was going to personally encourage me when I see the right kind of number in my head, that I should have at that point. But it never did. What I learned about surrender is that it usually shows up when you've run out of strategies, when you've tried everything that you know, when you have pushed as far as you can push and something still isn't settling. For me, surrender started as frustration. I didn't call it surrender. I called it, I genuinely don't know what else to do. And that's when something actually shifted. Like, not externally, but more like internally. I realized that I had built my sense of safety around outcomes, especially in my business. Like, if the business was growing, then I felt safe. If clients were booking, I felt confident. But when things were quiet, I felt threatened to some degree, which meant that my peace was conditional. Whereas surrender was the moment where I realized that peace cannot be built on performance anymore. And this is uncomfortable because performance works. Performance builds income and performance builds momentum. It builds security. But the thing is, you can still be fully booked and still feel anxious. You can be successful and feel unsettled. You can look aligned in the outside and still feel like something's off in the inside. I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about here. What I learned about surrender at this point is that it exposes what you've been depending on. And for me at that time, it exposes control. I didn't just want growth. I wanted predictability. I wanted control, measurable growth. And then when that didn't happen exactly the way I planned, I spiraled. Surrender forced me to ask a different question. So instead of asking, how do I make this work? The question became, what am I holding that isn't mine to carry? And that changes everything. In business, surrender didn't mean stopping. It meant building something differently. It meant moving from panic-driven decisions to conviction-driven ones. It meant no longer chasing every tactic just because someone else said it worked. It meant asking, is this aligned with the truth or just fear? And here's something I didn't expect. When I stopped forcing on outcomes, clarity increased. Not instantly and not magically, but kind of steadily. I started making fewer reactive decisions. I stopped overcompensating when things were quiet. And I stopped trying to prove myself. And here's the slightly funny part. The less I tried to control every detail, the more stable the things became. Which is very annoying, in my opinion, because I would have preferred to have a dramatic formula, this is the things that finally gonna work. But surrender works like that, like it's subtle, it's internal, it's not flashy or anything like that. And another thing that I learned is that surrender is not passive. And it doesn't mean like you now surrender. So that means you're sitting back and saying, well, whatever happens, that's avoidance. Surrender is active trust, which means you're not only showing up, but you're doing the work. You're building the stuff that you need to build. But the difference is that you will be releasing the obsession with controlling the result. And the difference of that is huge, especially if you carry responsibility for other people's healing or other people's progress in your business, the results, the transformation. There's a quiet pressure that comes with that. You want to help deeply and you want to lead well and you don't want to misguide anybody. And that responsibility can really turn spiritual weight. Like I learned to surrender also means acknowledging, like you are not the savior. You're the guide. And that is freeing. That is very humbling. And in my own journey, surrender also meant confronting beliefs that I had built around my identity around. Beliefs about success, about control, about what it means to be strong. And I realized something uncomfortable, especially as a single mom, that I trusted my strategy all this time more than I trusted anything deeper before, I trusted my intelligence, my planning, that I can be 10 steps ahead, my structure. And all of this is more than I trusted surrender to God in this case. Letting go of that feels very terrifying because control feels safe. So as much as it feels safe to rely on your own strength, it's undeniably exhausting. But here's what I've learned. Control gives the illusion of safety. Surrender builds real security. When you stop gripping on outcomes, you start building from conviction instead of fear. Your decision gets cleaner and your messaging gets clearer as well. Your business gets lighter, and this matters a lot practically. And guess what? Surrender stabilizes my nervous system more than any tactics ever did. It allows me to separate my effort from my identity. My business can have a quiet month and I'm still steady. My content can underperform and I'm still grounded. And that shift alone changed how I lead, how I run my business. Now, let me connect this with something practical. Surrender doesn't mean that you don't build structure, all right? In fact, surrender can allow you to actually have more space in your business to build what actually is needed. Why? Because you're not going to be building from fear or panic anymore. You will be building from clarity. Now, inside of Elevation 12, this is something that I talked about a lot. We don't just build client system or how can you get clients, but we're more likely focused on how you can build them from stability, not desperation, not fear, not inconsistency. Because if you're still building your business from fear of what if it slows down, what if I tried this and it's just not working, at the end of the day, you will very unlikely will make bad decisions or decisions that are rushed based on fears or things that are not healthy. On the opposite side, if you're building from surrender and faith, you will design your business in a much more different way. You will stop overcomplicating, you will focus on the right things, and everything will start to fall into place. And that's when systems actually work. Everything I learned about surrender can be summarized like this. You still show up, you still build, you still take action, but you stop gripping. You stop trying to force timing. You stop trying to tie your worth to your outcomes. And you stop relying on organic things that are very passive. And strangely enough, that's when growth becomes sustainable. And if you're watching this and you feel tired, like not physically, but more like internally, it might not be because you need a new strategy, but it might be because you need to release something that you've been carrying that is not yours to carry. And if you want to build your business from that place, steady, structured, without panic, without forcing, without being salesy, that's exactly what Elevation 12 is designed to help you do. Not to hustle harder, but to really start to build from a cleaner and calmer space. Build with a conviction instead of fear. And if you feel like that's where you're at right now and you want to know more about how it works, just comment Elevation and I'll send you the details. So surrender is not dramatic. It's something quiet. It doesn't really look impressive, but it changes everything. And if you're in a season right now where you feel like things are just tight, it's uncertain, it's a little bit heavy here and there, maybe it's not a sign that you're failing or anything like that. Maybe it's a sign that you're being invited to let go of something that was never yours to carry. And that might be the strongest thing that you can do this year.